Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's virtual information session on managing digital transformation in sport. It is a pleasure to have everybody connecting. My name is Diego Valdez. I'm joined by Stephen Bourke, who I will introduce in just a moment. You can see him on camera and we are about to get started. So we're delighted to have everybody connecting tonight. I just want to make sure that you can hear us and that the sound is coming through okay. So what I'll ask you to do is in the chat box, what you should see at the bottom of your screen, I just ask you to type in yes or okay. And maybe if you want to type in where you're connecting from as well, your city or the country where you're connecting from, we like to know where where you guys are coming from and connecting from. So I see that there's okay from Mexico City, yes from BC, Canada. So there's a few people that are starting to engage with us in the chats. Okay, we have from Caracas, Venezuela. Hello, Caracas. Yes, from England, says Marcin. We also have Sergi from Barcelona. Hi, Sergi. We have Evan Simon from Jakarta in Indonesia. We have Lisbon as well. Okay, excellent. So glad to hear that the sound is coming through okay. So that means that we can begin. So as I said, let me introduce ourselves as we will begin the virtual info session tonight. My name is Diego Valdez. I'm the director at the Sports Business Institute Barcelona. And what we do is we specialize in providing training for those looking to develop, to advance, to progress their career in the business side of sports, particularly the football industry, but in general, the business side of sports. And tonight I'm joined by Stephen Bourke. Stephen is the program director for the new certificate that we're launching together on managing digital transformation in sports. He is a sports business strategist and digital analyst. So let me turn it over to you, Stephen, for an introduction, and then we can begin with tonight's session. So again, a real pleasure to have you on board tonight, Stephen.
Year to you, all of the people who have joined from all around the world. It just goes to show, one of the values and also power of digital media, that we're able to connect so easily on such a platform.
Excellent. Well, as always, we're delighted to have you on board, and we're looking forward to hearing all the great information that I know you've lined up for us tonight in this information session. So we'll turn it back to you in just a moment. Let me just go through what we're going to cover tonight. So this is the structure for tonight's webinar, tonight's info session, which should last anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes, depending on how we progress with the slides. But anywhere around 45 to 60 minutes is what we'll be doing. So first point that we're going to look at tonight, and the value that you're going to get from this virtual info session, is we're going to look at an overview of the digital economy in the sports industry. So we're gonna set the scene where we're at today. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And we're gonna identify those so that you understand why this course, why this certificate program has been launched. Then we're gonna turn it over to Stephen, when he's gonna tell us the 5 key takeaways that you need to know about digital transformation in sports. So he's gonna go through a journey that he's experienced in researching and developing and putting together this program, and give you 5 key takeaways that you will want to know, and you will want to pay close attention as to where we're at with the digital transformation in sports. At the end, we're going to look at the certificate in managing digital transformation in sport, which we're launching at the end of the month. January 29th is when we start, and this will provide you with the details as to why this course was developed, and more importantly, what value you will get out of it to navigate the digital disruption that we're facing in today's sports economy and sports ecosystem. So that's the way that we're going to structure the webinar. So let's begin, and probably the best way to look at where we're at and what the situation is in the business of sports and the business of football is looking at a quote from Gianni Infantino, who recently spoke at a congress in Doha. And this is what he said, and I quote, 2018 will be FIFA's year of digital revolution as we develop a worldwide digital future to engage and interact with fans. So what does this mean? Well, we're looking at the president of FIFA who is telling us that 2018 is going to be a revolutionary year as far as, the digital economy is concerned in sports. So that means that, broadcasters, sponsors, clubs, leagues, they're noticing this disruption and it's having an impact on their organizations. So that is one of the reasons why, we're doing this info session tonight. So you understand where we're at and where we're going and what is it that we need to understand in order to navigate the digital disruption and digital transformation in the sports industry. So at this stage, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen, who's going to give us an overview of where we're at today. And, after that, I'll come back on and talk to you a little bit more about the program that we're launching, as I mentioned at the outset. So, Stephen, over to you. We're delighted to have you here tonight.
Okay, thanks, Diego. I'll just stay with that slide a moment. I like it a lot. The key word that jumps out to me is revolution. Mr. Infantino could have used other terminology. He could have said transformation, for example, but he purposely, I'm sure, chose the word revolution because he wanted to put, I think, his people on notice of a couple of things. One, that there's urgency towards it. Two, that they can expect change. And three, that the change is going to be radical because a revolution is an overthrow of a system. So he's looking to totally change his world of football. And there's a lot of role modeling just in that one statement for the rest of us, I think. And so why are we here? Why is he facing a revolution? Why is sport and the economy so disrupted today? Particularly in sport, where we have what I referred to a couple of years ago, and it's gaining momentum as well, a tipping point where so many different factors that are digitally driven are actually impacting the consumer, the business, the commercial landscape. And I'll run through a few of them quickly. I'll just turn off my video so you're not distracted by me. Okay, so the first point is that traditional TV is in decline, and actually people now are going to mobile as their first screen, and mobile use in terms of the number of hours per day is actually more than TV for the first time. Secondly, sports popularity on TV is also declining as people become more online and more on demand, particularly the 18 to 49 years age group, which is the group who have the highest purchasing and spending power, are facing a major shift. And we see, for example, that viewership dropped 25% between Olympics 2012 to 2016. And you can pick up a paper on any given week and you see statistics about how NFL, which is the biggest sport in the US, is declining. English Premier League also. However, what we may need is a different way to measure, because it's not just the amount of people watching the sport on TV, but they may be consuming it in another way on a video streaming, for example, or highlights packages. So I think new measures will be coming our way for understanding how people are changing their viewership behaviours. Thirdly, viewership on TV is changing. In the last 5 years, some of the sports have increased their age by up to 10 years. Golf, Moto, Grand Prix have really increased. The NBA and Major League Soccer are actually exceptions to that. They've managed to keep stable because they have very good digital strategies in place. Millennials onwards are not subscribing to cable services. So ESPN, BT Sports, those powerhouses of sports provision are no longer on the increase. And in fact, their memberships are declining as people are really gravitating towards the likes of Netflix and YouTube. As I mentioned, video streaming is tremendously powerful, and it's one of the reasons why esports is gaining so much traction. And digital platforms are winning broadcast rights, so there's a fragmenting of the commercial revenues, and how that's going to change the value of revenues remains to be seen into the future as well. Esports are mainstream. Now younger people are following their favorite gamers and gaming streams in the same way that they would follow previously a sport and their role models there. So that's a tremendous disruptor to sport. Sport no longer competes with other leagues. Digital age is about attention and where people's attention is, and it's all online. So it's on social media, streaming, and as I mentioned, gaming or esports. So growth has to come from digital means to attract new fans, to be able to commercialize, to monetize on digital in its own right, or are all revenue streams to be able to attract sponsors, to be able to tell them your growth story, are all important to driving revenues, and that can only come through digital means. This is an interesting slide from Google search, and it reveals a couple of things. One, it shows the power of data, and it shows the power that Google has, because they can actually see what we're thinking collectively. So this is a slide that shows the searches that have happened on Google for digital transformation. And we can see in the last 18 months particularly, there's been a real spike in interest of people researching digital transformation, because they want to understand that, they want to get prepared. And the thing with digital is it's not a trend. It's the modern reality. And sport, in fact, is one of the most disrupted of all industries. And people such as the head of Microsoft, the head of SAP, who deal with sports, but they also deal in other verticals across the globe, point out that sport is as disrupted as any other industries are. And that's for a few different reasons. One, technology is evolving more rapidly, and as technologies evolve and become mainstream, they always impact sport, because sport is a reflection of society. So anytime a new technology, it may have been virtual reality or augmented reality this year, for example, sport straight away has to work out how it does have to fit into the organization. And we all start to look at who are the first movers in these things to get their ideas. Secondly, consumer expectations are rising. And for sport, we're small to medium businesses, but because of the loyalty of fans, they're creating enterprise or multinational level expectations. So sport businesses are really under the microscope when it comes to their fans, because there has to be a trade-off or a value exchange for the loyalty that they feel associated with their favorite teams. And then competitive pressures from new businesses, and the new business in sport is esports. As I mentioned before, as many people now are as into it as they are sports, and we would never have thought sport would have been in that position pre-digital. So now I spent the best part of 2 years putting together this course. And so it was good that it took me so long to do that, because I have a day job in sport myself as well, but also because I could track the trends as they appear, or as they mature, or as new happenings come along. And so it's been a journey for me to actually get to understand the digital economy, digital disruption, digital transformation in sport. So I've learned some macro themes that I'd like to share with you over the next few minutes. So the first one is that digital transformation is a people problem. What we're talking about last of all is actually the technology. What we're talking about firstly is people. And there never before, and particularly when I first started working in sports business, for example, there wasn't the concept of fan engagement, but fan engagement arose because people had the power that they'd never had before as a collective market, due to the invention of social media. And social media gave people a voice. Before that, it was just the team or any other product and service company providing that good or service that they wanted to provide to the community. But now with social media, the community has a voice, individuals have a voice that can be heard and can make a tremendous difference. So now we're all servants to fans, and there's a relentless pursuit for what we term the fan engagement and fan experience. But the other people thing is from the business side, and digital transformation is difficult when people are into that mode. And in fact, it's been likened to changing a tire on a car while the car is moving, because you have to keep the business going, but at the same time, you have to adjust the people's mindset, get them to work together in ways that they haven't, with tools that they haven't worked with before, all the while not disrupting the fans' expectations, but building on them all of the time. The thing also that we notice with people is that in digital transformation, that there can be 5 or 6 stages to maturity. And it's not until the later stages, probably the 4th or 5th of a 6-phase approach, that leadership gets involved. So before then, it's actually people in the organization who are the change agents, who are making decisions within their department, within their section, of applying a new investment, or using a new tool, or using data in a different way. And so these people are taking the responsibility themselves to try and move the organization on in ways that they know it has to move. And that's very challenging. And that's one of the reasons that I put this course together, is because we can all be change agents in this era. And I'll come back to that a little later. So the next thing that needs to be understood is that investing in technology should not be done for technology's sake, but it should be for what the features can do, but it should be done for what it can do for people. And so organizations shouldn't invest in technology because they can see a good PR story to it, or because someone really fancies the new shiny toy and they want to have that to play with because it'll make life interesting. That they're not sustainable. What needs to happen is that the people need to study the impact that technologies have in the broader community, but also within the sports industry, to see how it really impacts the fan base. And then you bring that back to how that's aligned to strategy. And I like to use AS Roma, for example, because they have a very good strategy. They want to be the most fan-connected team in the world. So when they're looking at a new technology, they can look at the behavior of that technology and work out, is that going to connect us more deeply with our fans? Is it going to give them a better experience? Is that going to give us more data to more deeply understand and have a stronger relationship with those people? So it's a real cycle, but the technology part, where physically investing in the technology, is actually the very last piece. The next point is that we're all digital pioneers. And to just take a step back, there's a good quote from McKinsey and Company, one of the main consultancy firms, that say, being digital is about using data to make better and faster decisions, devolving decision-making to smaller teams, and developing much more iterative and rapid ways of doing things. So what that means is that the organization needs to provide tools that give people the data, but that needs to go to smaller teams. And those smaller teams need to be responsible for their own iterations, their own innovation, their own ways of reacting in real time, because that's what the consumers now expect, and our fans certainly expect that as well. So every one of us, it doesn't matter if we're at officer level, if we're a supervisor, if we're a manager, we can all take advantage of tools that are probably freely available, or at least cheap to access and to start to use, and to cultivate data from them, to cultivate transactional engagements with fans and so on. The compelling part of us being digital pioneers and being leaders of the change within our organizations is this is a very challenging era, because not that many organizations have transitioned to being digitally mature at the moment, which means that people typically don't have the tools that they need. They don't have access to data and make data-based decisions for using the analytics for actionable insights. They don't have the technologies that they need. And so that's all creating very high levels of disengagement. So, I don't think have really we've been probably so obsessed with the fan experience and technology, but the staffing part has really been the missing link. And staffing is an area that I really focus on in the course, because culture is one of the things that can make or break an organization's strategy. Mr. Infantino, he might be planning a revolution, but if he doesn't work on his people side, then he's not going to win them over and get the people working together. Sport no longer competes within itself, so it needs to find inspiration from outside too. Before the digital era, we were only interested in what other leagues or other teams were doing, because sport only has other sport as its competitor. As I mentioned before, now anything that takes attention, which is online digital technologies, are a competitor to sport. So sport needs to look and see what's happening on the outside world and also take inspiration from what is happening. And that can come from a range of sectors. And the ones that I like to look at are retail. And you look at the digital retail of organizations like Nike or Gatorade, the hospitality area, and the sort of experiences that you can get from a Marriott Hotels or a Caesars Entertainment or a Disney Park. And the finance sector is another one that we should really pay attention to. And we see now that venues are looking at mobile ticketing, ticketless or payment options without needing to transact. And all of these innovations from other verticals can translate very well to sport. So sport needs to not just look at what other teams and leagues are doing, but also what the best experience providers in any other verticals that are relevant to the business of sport are. And this means that the very best in sport have an innovation approach that makes sure they tap into the outside world. Organizations like the LA Dodgers run an accelerator competition to find the best startups and to fund them. Others are developing strategic partnerships like Manchester United, Real Madrid, FC Barcelona have all done with big technology companies, and then even partnering with other verticals. McLaren in Formula One partnered with the pharmaceuticals company SmithKline Glaxo, because they both had different sets of skills that could be utilized. The pharmacological organization are very good in research and development, whereas McLaren in racing are very good with data and data engineering. So between them, they could swap expertise and both mutually grow. So innovation and looking outside the sports industry are a new phenomenon, but you can't be successful and maximize your transformation without doing that. And finally, marketing has a complexity gap, and don't we all? There was a study done by IBM a couple of years ago where they talked to about 1,700 chief marketing officers from around the world, and they identified a complexity gap. They didn't set out to find it, but that they did, because they asked the people, do you expect that there's going to be a high degree of change coming in the marketing sphere in the next 5 years? About 80% of the people said yes. And then they asked them, do they think that they're going to be ready for all of that change that comes in the time? And 50% said no. So already, like we know from the marketing people, that they don't feel comfortable that if they keep moving in the way that they're moving, that they're going to be able to address the complexity that's facing them. And the complexity typically is not in how to use tools, but it's how to analyze data, how to use data in real time, and how to make the fan engagement relevant, personal, and particularly the experience that the fan wants. So there's a great deal of pressure on the chief marketing officers. But even just before we came to air, I was looking at another piece of research which was talking about digital transformation. And it was showing that even though about 87% of organization leaders know that they need to do a digital transformation program, only about 44% of them have done enough in that space. So we see once again, there's about a 30% gap between expectation and capability. And so in sport, different than in other organizations, because once again, sport organizations typically are quite small. Others like Coca-Cola can be very big and can have their own in-house training programs. Sport typically doesn't have that luxury. So we place a lot of emphasis on partnerships. We place a lot of emphasis on conferences, on networks, and on training. And that's why, particularly in that space and this online course, and in partnership with Sports Business Institute, I'm proud to be able to bring this offering to the industry at a time when I think it really needs it. So Diego, that's all I wanted to say for those top 5 takeaways from me for now.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for those very interesting takeaways that I think resonate with a lot of the people that are listening tonight. So that's a good segue to talk about our certificate program that we're launching on January 29th on managing digital transformation in sports. So it's a 4-month program. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what the program entails. I'm going to tell you what's the value that you can expect to get out of such a certificate program. And then at the end, we're going to turn it back over to Stephen. And finally, we're going to turn it over for your questions. So stick around for the Q&A session, which we will have at the end of this presentation. So what is the course about and how is it structured? Well, here's a quick overview. So number one, the language is in English. So this is an international program. No matter where you are in the world, you will be connecting, you will be engaging with other professionals all through the language of English. The format, it's an online course, but it consists of a mixture of an online platform with resources which include presentations, case studies, documents, articles, reports, etc. A one-stop shop for you to have all the information. And we also have live sessions using this same platform where we're going to be engaging with you. We're going to be creating a collaborative program so that you can connect, that you can engage, you can share experiences with other professionals that are navigating through the same challenges. That said, one of the main advantages of the program is that it is online based and all of the sessions are recorded and all of the material is stored in the online platform. That means that you can work at your own pace if you are not able to attend the live sessions. All of this is recorded, so you can go through the program at your pace during the 4-month duration. As you can see, of course, it's 4 months, and the weekly dedication is anywhere from 3 to 5, 4 to 6 hours. So that means it's been designed to be done in parallel with other professional, other personal, other academic commitments. In other words, the people that are doing this course are working, they are in organizations, they are growing their career. So it's not a standalone course that you do that you have to take off time work or take off time studies. This has been designed to be done in parallel, and it's very streamlined because it goes straight to the issues that are relevant and that are key today. The fee is 2,950 euros, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second because there is an option to split the payment. The start date is January 29th, so we're right in the middle of the recruitment process. There's a lot of interest, a lot of demand for this program. We already have interested participants that have registered from different organizations from across the world. So it's a really good opportunity for you as a business professional looking to understand digital transformation, looking to know how to navigate this digital disruption that is impacting everybody across the industry. This is what the course has been designed for and what it has been aimed at. So no matter if you're a professional that is looking to just improve on your digital literacy, to add more value and to contribute and lead to business projects in your organization, whether you're looking for your own professional growth. As Steve just outlined earlier, this is something that is impacting the entire industry. This is a revolution, and those that are ahead of the curve, those that are looking ahead, are the ones that are going to be able to navigate through these times. So this is the overview of the program. Now, how does the methodology work? Well, as I mentioned before, there is a self-study online component that you have 24/7 access over the 4-month duration of the program. This is then complemented by lab sessions led by Stephen. I will also be present in the program, but apart from that, we've been able to invite and secure the presence of some really top professional digital experts that are coming from the best organizations in sport. And Stephen is going to talk a little bit more about some of those guest speakers, but we really have a fantastic lineup. We have people from Major League Soccer. We have people from Gfinity Esports. We also have additional speakers from SEAT, the Sport and Entertainment Alliance in Technology, plus a few additional speakers that Stephen, I'm sure, will allude to in just a moment as we continue moving forward. And all the while, you have the support, you have the guidance that we're going to provide throughout the program. Now, there is also a component of some practical assignments and a project for you to really take away the learnings of this program and have the assessments, have the practical hands-on material that you're going to be able to put into practice, into your day-to-day jobs or your day-to-day professional activities. The calendar, I know this is quite small, but we wanted to include just a quick screenshot of it so you have a visual of what the program entails. So essentially, the live sessions are on Monday evenings at 7:30 p.m. local time in Barcelona. So that's 6:30 for those of you in the UK. And if you're in the UAE, in Qatar, depending on the time, you should expect to attend somewhere around 9:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m., depending whether you're in the UAE, whether you're in Qatar. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can always do the learnings at your own pace because all of the sessions are recorded. So even if you're in a different time zone, I mean, we already have people registered from North America that are going to be connecting and may not be able to attend to the live sessions, but they're connecting because they want to hear what these experts have to share. They want to hear what Stephen has put together with this program. And that's how the course is structured. So you will see that Monday evenings, local time in Barcelona, 7:30 p.m. is when the live sessions take place. But that doesn't mean that's the only time that you engage with other participants and you create this collaboration, because we create other forums. We create WhatsApp groups among the cohort. So there's always a culture of sharing information, of collaborating, of expanding upon the knowledge that everybody brings to the table based on their personal background, their personal experience. And as Stephen said, each organization is different. Each profile is different as well. So everybody will come with a different lens, but at the same time, enriching the learning experience for everybody that's taking part in this cohort. And then, I mean, one of the great things about this certificate is that there's nothing like this out in the market for the sports industry. I mean, we've looked, we've researched, and there's nothing like this. So this means that this is something that we were listening to what the market asked for. All the organizations in sport are talking about managing digital transformation, and we listened to the market. We anticipated to what the challenges are, what the opportunities that they're bringing forward, and that's why we've developed this curriculum. So some of the key learning elements, the key benefits that you will get from investing in such a program is, number one, you're going to get very relevant, very up-to-date industry-specific knowledge. And as Stephen just mentioned, I mean, he's worked 2 years on putting this together. So he's, as he said as well, he's working in a sports position at the moment currently. So he's someone that understands the business of sport and has worked 2 years in putting this curriculum together. So you're going to get knowledge, you're going to get insight that is not academic, but that is current, that is relevant, that's happening in the industry today. Secondly, you're going to make contacts, you're going to expand your network. And this is important because, let's face it, relationships, and as Stephen again outlined at the beginning, this is about people. Digital transformation is about people, not so much about technology, but about how the people will adapt. and creating a network of contacts, understanding what are the challenges. We have people that are working for sports clubs, for federations, for brands that have signed up for this course. And what they're going to learn and what they're going to find is that they're going to be able to exchange, and they're going to be able to find out what are some of those opportunities, what are some of those challenges, what are some of those disruptions that everybody's encountering. And sharing that information is really a key component of the program. So not only will you learn from the top industry professionals, but you're also going to be engaging with peers that are, many of them already working in high decision-making positions in the sports business arena. And then, of course, finally, you're going to get, we like to say that there's a mentoring program in every course that we offer at SBI. And that means that you're going to get the support from us. There's always, challenges. There's always a need to rely upon someone. And that's where Stephen and I come into place in this particular program, that we're there to support you. We're there to guide you. And we're there to collaborate along the way based on our experiences, and more importantly, understanding what your challenges are and your experiences are moving forward. So again, the start date is January 29th. I'll read the quote here that we have, and that is that digital literacy is the #1 barrier to digital transformation. And what we've done with this course is we've offered this as a solution for sports business leaders, professionals looking for growth in their development, in their career, within their organization, leading projects, contributing to change based on what we're finding and what we've outlined already in this presentation. So these are the modules. There's 4 modules, 1 module on each month. So the first module is on sports business in the digital economy. Then we're looking at digital maturity, becoming a social business, and analytics and marketing. But I'll let Stephen talk a little bit more in depth about these modules himself. So Stephen, I'll turn it back over to you for your explanation as to how you've developed this course and what are the modules that you've put together and what the value that they bring to the participants that are going to be joining this course.
Okay, thanks, Diego. So the term digital literacy has come up quite a bit when Diego was talking. I'm sure I mentioned it as well. So to put a little bit of context to what that actually means, and without trying to recite any definition of it, really it's about having an understanding of the impact that the digital, in terms of the technologies, has on individual behavior, on how consumers have changed to such an on-demand lifestyle. We look at the impact that Uber and Airbnb business models have had. So it's understanding those types of concepts, particularly in a fan-facing way, to then be able to turn that inside to the organization and have or participate or lead conversations that need to be had in the organization. And so the way I've structured this course is because I was actually the course's first learner. I went to a conference probably 3 years ago, and I felt a little bit behind the times in terms of my own digital literacy, because there were different concepts, language being thrown around that was new to me. So I resolved to study that up, and it became a bit of a passion, and it's led to now. But the thing is, as a sports professional myself, I was able to say, okay, me being me, understanding sport, what is it that I want to know? So I've worked through that logically for anyone else as well. And so that's the teaching or educational framework that I've pursued. So the first topic that I wanted to present was an understanding of what all of the digital technologies are, the behaviors they have on fans, but also within the business as well. Because cloud computing, for example, can have a tremendous impact on the behavior of the organization itself, because it can offload some of the hardware, those legacy infrastructure systems that you've got sitting in the organization, and free the IT department up to be an innovation partner to totally change their role in the organization. So understanding all of these digital technologies technologies, and it's really hard to actually just go and find a list of them, but I've listed them down there, and we explore each one of those in turn in terms of the broad impact that they have on the economy, but then using real examples of how each of these technologies is being used within organizations, but also within a strategic context, because it's no point to just go and say, okay, let's do an Internet of Things project and put that into the organization. It has to be strategically evolved. And so we look at it in that framework as well. Before we get onto those technologies, we do spend some time looking at how the business of sport has changed in terms of the new responsibilities that we have. We're now digital retailers, where we now have to analyze data, where we have to develop a digital ecosystem, if you like, where our partners and vendors are attached to us in a pipeline that creates more value. So there's a lot of content that we cover to really set the scene of what follows. And as you then move through the next topics, each of these technologies fall naturally into the flow of the discussions in a way that we know that we already understand what their business case is, if you like. So the next one, and I mentioned before that digital transformation has been compared to changing a tire on a moving car. The thing with that as well is that every one of our cars is different, in that no one of us works in a similar organization to someone else, because there's so many different variables. It might be how much understanding of digital the leadership has to be able to set a strategy to communicate that. It might be the level of digital investments that are already going on in the organization that have to be integrated. It might be the culture and the willingness of the people to change. So many different factors go into making a successful digital transformation. But the important thing is that all of those factors are actually now known. The digital economy and organizations becoming digitally mature has been around for the best part of a decade now. So those hard-won lessons are there, and also knowing the pitfalls are also there. So we look at them all in turn as well. So by the end of this module, you have a good understanding of the strategic context of what it takes to become successfully adapting. It's the sort of stuff that Mr. Infantino will be going through in this year of revolution. Thirdly, digital and social media, the parts that people experience of the brand, the fans experience, those touch points are all an outward reflection of what a modern brand is. And so that's why we see that, there's often social media rankings and tables and so on, and some teams are up the top and others are down the bottom, and not just because of pure numbers, but also growth and so on. So like the ones who grow more are more purposeful, are more strategic, but they're also more empowering of their people who have responsibility of those social accounts to take risks, to add humor, or to push the envelope a little bit more, or to innovate when new features come into those social platforms, for example, because that's all a reflection of the brand values and culture and philosophy. Because everything that happens on the inside of their organization now gets turned outside. And also we can think about, if you think, okay, we want a new person to join the organization who has high digital literacy, they're going to look at the profiles of your organization online, and what are they going to say to them? Do you have a purposeful LinkedIn account? The NBA, UEFA have very good examples of how they use LinkedIn to grow their profile to be an employer of choice. So there's so much needs to be taken into account within the organization. So, and that's even before we start talking about the digital marketing and selection of social media platforms and what platforms behave differently and so on. So what this term doesn't focus on is how to be a really good social media account manager. But what it does is be able to recognize that, okay, this the postings that this organization are putting out are really in tune. They're consistent. They tell a good story. They're in line with the values of that platform and why people are there and those kind of things. So it gives people a strategic understanding, but it also will help people to understand how to be, very good online themselves as well as to be able to critically evaluate your own organization's performance online. And I think that's one of the things that's missing at the moment with senior leadership who didn't grow up as digital natives. So they typically can't interact with the social team or the marketing people and say, you need to improve in this area or do this, because they don't have that intrinsic expertise to be able to do that. And one of the real shortcomings that we find in organizations is that the social objectives, one of the main ways that people are reached out to by a brand, are not connected to enterprise objectives, which is something that can really be maximized on for organizations. And then we look at a whole lot of socially inspired trends that I have listed there as well. Finally, data and analytics are one of the fundamental pieces of digital transformation. They're like the platform of the building. You cannot transform without having a good data set. You need to use it for personalization, for being relevant, for making decisions. But all of that can only come if the people who are collecting the data and analyzing it, one, have the right tools to do that, two, know what they should be collecting, but three, there's a culture in place that can actually make sure that the data is getting to the right people, and that the people, like the management or the leadership, actually are reaching out for that data because they want that to make the right decisions. We can no longer rely on gut instinct, which I know has taken the sports industry, to points from pre-digital. So a lot of organizing has to go on within the organization to be able to become a data master. And in fact, even of the digitally mature organizations that are out there, and there's probably only around 25% per any industry group, only half of them could say that they're well on top of their data. So a majority of organizations have much work to do here. So we look at what needs to take place to become to build up that mastery, but then we look at a lot of best practice examples, particularly from the world of sport, from teams, how they've done campaigns, how they've grown their data capture, their CRM programs, etc. And our guest speaker program also reflects on that as well. Then to round it all out, as I mentioned, there's digital leaders in every industry, and some of the ones that have really, risen their head above the pack when I've been studying the sports industry, and they appear quite often throughout the case study examples, although there's many more. Organizations here, such as the Golden State Warriors, Orlando Magic in the NBA, because the NBA is the most advanced league, if we can say, in entirety. Then in football or soccer, the FCB, the Real Madrid, Manchester City, Bayern Munich are doing excellent work, and their case study is, I think, unparalleled, and I shared some insights on that in the previous webinar. AS Roma, I mentioned before, and the Seattle Sounders in the Major League Soccer are also quite amazing. They actually even let their fans vote on the retention of the general manager, which really keeps the organization accountable to the fans. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's good to learn from outside of the sports industry. So we look at, Nike is a great example, Gatorade, Disney, the experiences that these organizations offer, that the way that they brand themselves and their relevance to their markets is really world leading. So, they feature as well. So, Diego, did you want to say anything for now?
No, Stephen, if you want, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the speakers, and that way we can round up about what the program entails.
Yeah, glad to. The speakers, we've been really purposeful in selecting them because they fit into each of the modules, and as it turns out, I'm a member of on the board of the Sport and Entertainment Alliance in Technology Conference that originates out of the US. It's also had London and European editions, but it's the one that all of the major leagues attend in the US, and it's been running for 10 years now. And so it's really built up a community. And so a lot of these people are connections or even board members that I have at SEEK, but I'll give you some insight into these people. Charlie Shin is the analytics VP at Major League Soccer. And as I mentioned before, as the age of the fan bases are increasing quite rapidly in many codes, the MLS has managed to keep theirs fairly neutral. So they're doing some of the world's leading stuff with analytics and fan engagement, and also how they're using esports as well, because they see that esports in the football version can be the first experience that young people have. So they're actually using that as their entry point as well. So Charlie's got wonderful insights on a range of topics to do with data and analytics and growth in general. Then Jack Elkins is probably one of the top three, I would think, speakers on innovation in sport in the world. He heads up the Orlando Magic's Innovation Lab, and he has done for quite a few years. And Orlando Magic are an award-winning organization for their use of data and analytics to provide fan experiences, but they're also well acknowledged for their innovation program. And over a number of years, Jack's really cultivated an innovation process and program, because innovation is core to the values of the Magic. And so their leadership decided a few years ago, okay, if we're going to say we've got innovation in our values, we need to have someone responsible for that in the organization. And so Jack became that person. They created a lab so that they've got a physical presence in-house. So his knowledge of innovation in terms of techniques, in terms of engaging the organization and building a culture of innovation into everything they do is quite phenomenal. Tom Halls is really interesting in that he started in sport and now works in esports. So the conversations that we can have with him go back and forth between what can sport learn from esports, what is esports learning from sport. But most importantly, if I'm in sport and I want to know, okay, I need to be thinking about getting into esports, how should I be thinking? Then Tom's our person. He worked at the Lawn Tennis Association in the UK. Then he went over to Formula E, the electronic digitized racing. And then he went into esports, and he's excelling in that domain now as well. So he's a wonderful contributor. Christine Stoffel is actually the founder and CEO of SEEK Conference and SEEK Community. So it's a real privilege to have her accept the invitation to participate in this, because she's seen from her expansive network and the conferences that she's put together over the past decade, the evolution of the digital economy and the challenges and the ways that organizations have overcome that. So the amount of content in her brain that I look forward to getting out of her to impart to the participants is going to be one of the highlights as well, I think. And John Burkhart is probably one of the most entertaining business speakers going around. He's based in the UK, but he's a football mad person from the US, and his specialty, he's he's an author, but he also comes from the PR side, and now he really specializes in getting brands to become more personal in their social media communication. So he has his own style, and it's going to be a unique and fun session. Diego?
Thank you, Stephen. So there you have it. I think we've covered everything that we wanted to go through tonight. We've looked at what the course entails. We've looked at the speakers. Hopefully, we've been able to clarify what this certificate program is all about. And of course, we set the scene and set the tone when Stephen was outlining where we're at in the industry today. So at this point, just to summarize, the course begins January 29th. We're getting a lot of demand. There are limited spaces, so if you are interested, get in touch with us. As I said, the fee is 2,950 euros, but we can arrange to split that into payments. So if you are interested in the program, get in touch with us. Get in touch with us because we'll be able to find out exactly about what your situation is. The course is 4 months, and as I said, the limited spaces are available. So if you are interested, just be sure to get in touch with us. At this stage, what we'll do is we'll turn it over to you guys for your questions. Take advantage of this space to ask us anything that you want about digital transformation in sport, about the digital disruption in the industry, or about the certificate program. If it is something that you're considering and that you think will add value, let us know. Now's the time to ask your questions. And either myself or Stephen will be happy to do that. So we have a question here from Vinicius Moura, and he says, what do you think will be the social media main challenges to negotiate and convince clubs to sell transmission rights to them instead of TV? So we had a very interesting infographic about this, Stephen. So perhaps you want to tackle that question that Vinicius is bringing up. So thank you for the question, Vinicius.
Yeah, so it's about planning. It's about foresight. In the first instance, and for example, Major League Baseball have their own distribution and content channel, so that they foresaw early that, and also part of their strategy was that they wanted to have control over their own content. So they now have global access passes that they own and can distribute throughout territories in the world. I know the Australian Football League in Australia also do that into other territories as well. So the first thing, if we were to take stock of where we are today, it's to look at the contract and see what opportunities exist. And so some of the early things that we see, such as that AFL one I mentioned, is that they're able to look outside of the territories that are being broadcast in. Now, that's probably easy for an organisation such as Australian football, which is fairly domestic, but there's also now expats overseas and growing interest because of online content and the like. So they were able to quickly package that up and monetize that. But it all comes back to what is available legally for now, and then looking into the future to understand that it is a fragmented TV and digital world now, and then how do you value those assets and how do you bundle those assets in future negotiations?
Yeah, that's certainly going to be interesting to monitor and look as we move forward, and this is evolving and changing as we speak. So very interesting point, and thank you for the question, Vinicius. We have a question from Alex Mejia from Mexico City. Hola, Alex, bienvenido. So he says, what's the best way to present sport digital content to new consumer markets whom are familiar with sports, like USA fans? So Stephen, any insight on that one?
Can you explain that one a little bit more to me, please?
Right. So Alex is saying, what's the best way to present sports digital content to new consumer markets who are familiar with sports, like USA fans? So I'm guessing he means that, how to engage with fans in the US, or Alex, if you perhaps want to add a little bit more context to that point.
I've got it. Yep, I've got it. Thanks. You need to understand the fans in that location. And I know that the NFL had to do this when they were moving games into to London as well, because you can't just assume that the people are going to understand the terminology and the culture that comes with the sport and its traditions and so on. So there's a couple of things. One is to work out what data you do have available of those fans into that new region, because of social media, what conversations they're having there, who your followers are, what type of demographics, what you can find out about their personas. But the second thing is people should ideally immerse themselves in the culture of where you want to be broadcasting to. And we see that happening a lot, particularly with La Liga now, who want to really globalize the game. And they're now putting offices, I think they opened their fifth office in Asia late last year, because they wanted to create a presence there to understand the football fan in China, because they needed to understand that person so that they could have content that's relevant for them in their own language, but in their own terminology, how they like to consume the content, when they like to consume it, because people, maybe they're commuting, the Asians do a lot of commuting, on trains and so on in the mornings and later in the evening. So their consumption times are different as well. So it's really a case of what data do you have, and then what can you really find out from being in that market.
Okay, great. Thanks for that detailed answer. And of course, thank you for your question, Alex. A great question coming all the way from Mexico City. So we have another point here from Jose Luis Splendorio. Jose Luis, nice to see you back in one of our info sessions. He's connecting from Caracas. And his question, Stephen, is interesting, because he says, what about the digital transformation in Latin America? So what do you think about this? Are there some regions that, could learn? And I mean, talking about this certificate program is interesting about that, because I'm certain that there's some areas in the world that, will look to benchmark to some of the other, markets that are ahead in certain areas when it comes to disruption and digital transformation. So anything that you'd like to add on that, Stephen, as far as what is being done in other regions, particularly in his question, Latin America?
Yeah, I think that the digital economy is kind of an interesting thing, because it's so new that it's not always about being first. Because being first probably means that you've done all of the real pioneering work, and you've probably made mistakes. So it's the people who follow quickly after that, or who learn well from the mistakes and the best lessons, and apply them well. So with that theory in mind, the constraint in any geographical area is going to be internet access and internet penetration. Another interesting thing that we notice in countries or regions that maybe are more emerging than the most advanced, and I live in one myself here in Qatar, is that people are mobile first already. It's easier to own a mobile now and have Wi-Fi access than it is to have a hardwired computer in your home or in your office. So those people are very adept at picking things up that add value to them within those modes. So perhaps the practical examples of digital transformation may not be as abundant in the region, but I would think that the uptake, once the strategy is developed, can actually be quite good, because you don't have to go through as many iterations of technology and platforms to get to where you want to be. You can kind of skip earlier generations of the digital evolution.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. And I think the question that comes up next comes from Evans Simon from Jakarta. He's sort of asking a similar question, but for the Indonesian market. So probably we can equate to a lot of the things that Stephen has just alluded to about Latin America and in some of these markets as he suggested. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything in particular, Stephen, on Indonesia in specific, but I think what you've talked about before sort of would cover that as well, right?
Yeah, I can give you one practical example, not from Indonesia, but from India. What I was talking about is that people didn't used to move around so much there, so they didn't have signposts on the sides of the roads to tell you how far the next town was and so on. And then technology came along, and so they didn't have to worry about doing that, because now everyone's got a GPS in their car that tells them that they can, how far that they need to go. So it's that kind of opportunity that it can present itself. And it's the same with we're talking about, okay, you don't need to be, or if you're thinking about website, you don't necessarily need to be thinking about the hardwired computers in people's homes. You can just be thinking about the web version, because the mobile version, because the penetration of use of mobile compared to other forms of technology is probably going to be more pronounced, and so you can focus on that. So there can be some kind of advantages. It's about knowing the trends of that area, such as, like I said, internet use and who's using it, and the same with social media, who's using it and what platforms, and then what the penetration rates are as well across different technologies, in the internet itself, and also social media. And there's a lot of information, pretty much at hand on all of those things now.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Very interesting to hear that specific case about India. So thank you for that question, Evans. And we have another question coming in here, and it's coming from Sedat from Istanbul. Hello, Sedat. Nice to see you. And he says, if the program will cover the area of, blockchain, Bitcoin that we're hearing so much about now, and how this could be incorporated into the sports industry, or how this is being, looked at, and how this can have an impact in the sports industry. So, Stephen, what about this? These new, terms that we're becoming more and more familiar with, such as blockchain, Bitcoin, etc., and how their impact is relevant for this program.
Yeah, it's a great question. I asked myself that question just today, actually. But the other thing in general with the course is that, if a good example comes up next week, then it's going to be in the course, because we're able to iterate on it all the time. And so I'm always scouring the landscape on a daily basis to find different cases, particularly following the good clubs and the digital leaders. But to your question specifically, I've held off a little bit on that one, because I want to see a use case from sport. As I said, we need to understand that the technologies from the behavioral side, and I haven't seen that yet, although I'm just starting to see a little bit written about how those like blockchain and cryptocurrencies may be able to be used in ticketing, for example. So I'm keeping my eye on it, and I wouldn't be surprised by the time we start the course, by the time we finish the course, particularly in 4 months, that it's going to have been an interesting period of time. And I dare say, if it merits writing about, because the industry has picked up on it, or has really worked out what its benefit can be, then for sure I'm going to explore it.
And that's one of the advantages, really, of having you on the course, Stephen, because you have the finger on the pulse on everything that's happening in the digital economy, the digital landscape. So I'm certain that, as you said, throughout the 4 months duration of this program, that there's going to be areas that are going to become relevant from one moment, and that's going to be something that we're going to be able to include and adapt in the course. So again, to stress the fact that this is something that is very relevant, that is very up to date as far as the content that you can expect to see in the program. So that's an excellent question. And,
well, one other thing I would add to that, Diego, is that when I first started writing the course, like I said, the best part of 2 years ago, and that technology part in the first module, augmented reality wasn't there, virtual reality wasn't there, artificial intelligence wasn't there, but those things have so quickly risen to prominence. And that's the thing with technologies. Once they emerge and go mainstream, there's a whole raft of organizations, startups working on those things, to get some advantage and get some traction into the economy. So it doesn't take long before we're able to really formulate a good opinion and use case of these new technologies.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point. I mean, it's an ever evolving landscape. So that's something that we have very clearly identified in this program. And as I said, Stephen is the right person having the finger on the pulse and looking at what we have. We're very excited. We're really very excited with what we've put together, and particularly what Stephen has developed with this program. So, right, thank you. So maybe we'll take one or two more questions, whether you want to include them in the chat box now about the program, about anything that you want to talk about with Stephen at the moment. Go ahead and type it in the chat box. We have time for maybe a couple more questions. I know we've run over by a bit, but we have a question here from JP Rodriguez, Juan Pablo Rodriguez from Mexico. So we have another participant from Ciudad de Mexico. So welcome, Juan Pablo. And he says, what do you think will be the most relevant or game-changing digital data from consumers that we'll be able to collect during the World Cup in Russia 2018?
The thing that I'm seeing, that the most interesting development I'm seeing now is what the City Football Group have been able to do by branding their own platform. Because as we know, with the likes of Facebook and Twitter and the other social media channels, you don't get access to their data. You don't own the data. So City Football Group, particularly through Manchester City, created a platform called Citizens, as in a play on the word citizens. And so now people can use that as their own direct social media channel with Man City. Major League Baseball have also done it with in-field chatter. What they're trying to do is bring the fans closer to the people, so the fans closer to the brand. So if Russia's able to apply a technology like that, then I see that the depth of data that comes out of it will be pretty amazing, because it's going to be wholly owned by them. It's going to be accessible immediately, so that topics that are trending are going to be able to be probably integrated into broadcast far more efficiently, and the types of content that's going to be available to broadcast for that, because of their access to conversations as well. I think that's the type of technology that's going to drive new data.
Right. So thank you for that question, Juan Pablo. And of course, thanks, Stephen, for yet another great information session tonight. So I'll turn back my camera on here just to conclude along with Stephen. Hopefully tonight you've gained some additional insight as to what we mean by digital transformation, as to why this is such a relevant topic, why this is important for clubs, leagues, sponsors, broadcasters, and the impact that they're feeling with this. So, I think hopefully by having been with us over the past hour and 10 minutes, I guess it is now, we've been able to explain to you in further depth the situation, but also what this solution that we've come together to create in partnership for industry professionals, the certificate in managing digital transformation in sport. So go ahead and get in touch with us. As I said, there's a lot of demand for this program. There's a lot of people that are interested. There's still some time. The course begins January 29th. So if you are interested, get in touch with us. We'll be glad to answer your questions. We have the email that you see. I think we've put together here. contact at sbibarcelona.com, so you can get in touch with us. We'll be glad to send you additional information, answer any queries you may have. Also via Twitter, you can get in touch with myself. You can, Stephen is on Twitter. You can follow him at SB1Sport. He's constantly posting and sharing valuable information about the digital economy in the sports industry particularly. So that said, just thank you for your participation tonight. I'll turn it over to you, Stephen, for the final word. And once again, thanks for being here to all of you tonight. So Stephen, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for your time. I know it's so precious these days, so you've hung in, very well, and I'm personally appreciative of that. But I just also want to congratulate you for your interest in such a topic as well, because digital literacy is at its first point about individuals progressing more within their own careers and their own roles, because as I mentioned in the first slide, digital is about growth. So if you can understand digital more, you're going to be able to grow yourself, and then that's only going to improve your prospects for career advancement. You'll be the ones participating in the projects or being invited into new think tanks and the like. So as well as being able to lead your own department, unit, even organization. So congratulations for your interest, and I hope I was able to impart some good knowledge for you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. And I'll finish off with a question, from the comment from Volker, who says, thank you very, very much for this presentation. Looking forward to starting at the end of the month. I know Volker has signed up for the program already, so looking forward to seeing you on the 29th, Volker. And in the meantime, of course, feel free to get in touch with anyone from our team. And that's going out to everybody here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, as always, for imparting so much knowledge and so much information on the digital economy. So looking forward to engaging with everybody soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.